Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Courageous Leadership with Virginia Prodan. I'm so grateful that you are back here. I'm grateful for your questions and concerns, for your ideas. And for those of you who don't know, don't know me, I'm Virginia Prodan, an international human rights attorney, speaker, author, book Saving My Assassin. And for those of you who never read the book, you can find the book Saving My Assassin at virginiaprodanbooks.com. Our podcast is focused on you and training you and teaching you to live a life of courage and significance, and to be aware of the changing color in America, and to stand up on God's values. And today we have a wonderful treat for you. We have Dr. Jeff Myers, president at Summit Ministry, returning to our podcast. And he has a new book, and he is right here ready to share with you a lot of things. So take your pen, make your place quiet, and listen to Dr. Jeff Myers. Thank you so very much. Why don't you introduce yourself, Dr. Jeff?
Hi, Virginia. It's great to be back with you. It's the second show that we've done together.
Yes. So I know you are the president of Summit Ministry, and I know that you started with training students. Now you train even kids at younger age, and you also extended the ministry to training parents how to train their kids, and grandparents to train their kids. Tell our audience that might not know you just a little bit about the ministry.
Summit Ministries is located in Colorado, and our purpose is to equip and support the rising generation to embrace God's truth and champion a biblical worldview. We do that in two main ways: through curriculum and through conferences. The conferences are these 11-day experiences in Colorado, which your own son attended. And
Yes.
These events, yes, they are still going today. I have next door 185 students plus about 50 or so staff. And they develop this incredible community over the course of 2 weeks, revolving around the study of a biblical worldview. So Christian thought leaders come in and speak at the program. You've been a speaker here at the program. And they learn of a biblical worldview of life, of sexuality, of marriage, of economics, of history, of politics, and all these different things, so that they can be more effective as leaders. And the curriculum does something similar, but as you mentioned, it can be done for younger children, homeschool children, Christian school children, even public school children in release time programs study biblical worldview with Summit Ministries, kindergarten through grade 12.
Thank you so very much for telling this maybe to the ones that don't know very much about the Summit Ministry. And I had the privilege and an honor to speak at Summit Ministry several times, and it's absolutely amazing. And I heard from students back, so it's a wonderful ministry. But you wrote a new book. This book has a special focus. So I want to go directly to your new book.
Love it.
So tell us about your new book and how people can buy the book and all the details.
Okay. The new book is called Should Christians Support Israel? Finding a Biblical Worldview in an Impossible Situation. You can get the book, you can get it at no charge by going to summit.org/Israel. And then just put in your information there. If you want to contribute something to help pay for the shipping and handling, you can. But I'm sending the book out to people at no charge because I want to get it in the hands of pastors and other ministry leaders who will in turn order copies in large quantities to distribute to the people they influence. That's really the ultimate goal of it. I wrote the book. Well, the story goes back to October 7th, to the terrorist attack on Israel. And at the time, I was watching the rising generation, Gen Z in the United States of America, become very anti-Israel and then become, as a result, anti-Jewish as well. It turned out in November, Harvard University did a poll They found that 51% of those in Gen Z thought that Hamas's attack on Israel was justified because of Palestinian grievances. And I thought that has to be a mistake. Don't they know that Hamas is an apocalyptic rape and death cult that murdered in cold blood 1,200 innocent people and took 250 hostages? Don't they know that they wantonly raped the women in front of the men and mutilated their bodies? How can you possibly be in favor of that? Well, that figure went up in December to 60% of Gen Z. So I wrote an opinion editorial piece for the Daily Wire called Congratulations, America. You've trained a generation of terrorist sympathizers. That got a lot of feedback, positive and negative, a lot of really interesting negative feedback. But it led to the opportunity to go to the war zone in January. And while I was there visiting with citizen soldiers, hostage families, survivors, intelligence officers, people on the right, the left, journalists, secular people, religious people. And in all of those meetings and interviews, I gained a lot of information that I knew Americans were not hearing in the mainstream media. And I knew at that point I needed to write about it.
I know you mentioned the percentage of Jay-Z and the percentage of students and everything, but from very conservative media and from news that were documented, many of them said that these students were paid daily for to be there, will pay and receive the tent, the food, absolutely everything, that there is someone behind them that supports them. And many of them, I know being in school, I went to law school in Romania and went to law school in America. And I know that when you're a student in school, you don't have time to demonstrate and to sleep outside and to do those things. You have to do your homework. And sometimes you will ask yourself, how in the world these students will pass the test for saying so many hours? So there is a big, big organization behind this. And also there is also the desire for other students that might not be participants, but they want to be accepted and they are afraid to speak up. So would you tell us in those people that were supported by the media or whatever group was, with money, with food and everything, and even with the way they should demonstrate, what kind of words to say? Because if you watch them, they were all saying the same words. There will be one person and the others repeat. So on one side, this one, and on the other side, please address to students that might not be against Israel, but they are too fearful to speak up.
Yeah. Hamas is an Islamist group. It is a radical subset of a Muslim worldview that believes that in order for Islam to succeed globally, the nation of Israel must be destroyed. They find it as a great threat. There's one Jewish nation in the world. There are 57 Muslim nations in the world. If you look at Israel on a map, it's completely surrounded by Muslim nations that are far larger in their land area, far more wealthy in terms of their natural resources. And little tiny Israel is sitting there in the middle, and Hamas just can't stand it. Well, when they planned their military campaign to try to bring about the annihilation of Israel, they also planned a propaganda campaign for the United States of America. This propaganda campaign, if you trace back the money behind it, as you were mentioning earlier, it's a very bizarre story. There's a group called Foundation for Middle East Peace. They receive funding, large amounts of funding, from an anti-Israel Jew named George Soros. George Soros supports every left-wing progressive cause that there is in the United States with funding. He's the guy behind getting district attorneys in place in some areas that just refuse to prosecute crime. And so cities like San Francisco and New York have completely gone to pot. He's the guy behind all of that. He really wants to bring down American society. He wants to bring down, more specifically, Judeo-Christian civilization. So Foundation for Middle East Peace, in turn, funds a group called Students for Justice in Palestine. When you saw people protesting on campuses, breaking into buildings and so forth, that's all that group, SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine. It is a specifically pro-Hamas group. This is not just a group of people who are Palestinian in general. It is people who are pro-Hamas. The slogans they are chanting on campus are Hamas slogans. This does not mean, however, and we know, by the way, we know all of that. I document it in the book because I found the planning memo that Students for Justice in Palestine was working from in the conference call they had the evening of the attack, October 7th attack. The Students for Justice in Palestine had a planning call for how to carry the propaganda war to the United States of America, while there were still terrorists being rooted out of the communities that they had attacked in Israel. They did not wait. In fact, that's kind of what caused them to be caught, because if you want to condemn Israel for responding militarily, you should probably wait until Israel actually responds militarily before you begin the condemnation. They got their messaging out of order and began condemning Israel for things they had not done. And then that raised the ire not only of conservatives, but also of the left-wing, liberal wing of the Democratic Party. And some very wealthy left-wing donors began to turn against Students for Justice in Palestine. And that, of course, then shaped the entire debate. So there are students behind it who are being paid. Their groups are being funded. They're being given stipends so that they can protest full time. They're being given exactly what to say and how to say it. They're being trained in the media, and they're being trained in tactics of revolution so that they know how to use the opportunities they have to try to foment violence. Most of the students who are there are just kind of onlookers. They have a generalized, they don't really have a very strong moral core. They just have a very generalized sense that they should be social justice warriors. And they look at Israel and say, well, Israel's militarily strong and financially strong, and the Gazans are not. So obviously the Gazans are the oppressed and Israel is the oppressor. So I'm going to join in into these protests. 55% of them they said they were all chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. 55% of them could not tell you what river and what sea they were chanting about. That means they have a fundamental level of ignorance about what's really going on. They're just the kind of people who enjoy being involved in a cause.
Yeah. It's absolutely clear about this, and people need to understand that. But on the other side, please tell us, how do you encourage in your book or at your ministry the students who know the truth about Israel, but they are too afraid to speak? Some of them might be afraid of physical violence. Some of them might be afraid that they will not be accepted by other students and so forth.
Yeah. I don't even really know what to say. If you can't be a person to have the courage to stand up for what you believe, then do you really believe it? We have to be able to stand up for the truth. That doesn't mean that when somebody's having a protest that you stand out on the street and scream at them. But it does mean when the opportunity arises to have a conversation that you be the kind of person who can ask good questions and who can help other people come to a knowledge of the truth. What I'm seeing this is not true in the West Bank and Palestine, by the way. They don't have parades and violent protests and so forth like they do in the United States. Even among other Palestinians, they don't have it. No Muslim countries have it. It is only in the United States that this is taking place on a large scale. So it's really important to understand that this is a kind of cult mind control that has taken over the minds of these people. They believe in their cause without thought, in the same way that somebody involved in a cult believes in their cause without thought. What do you do when somebody has been controlled by a mind control cult? Whether they've been controlled in their behavior, their information, in their emotions, or whatever it happens to be. Well, the number one guy helping people come out of cults, Dr. Stephen Hassan, says the first thing you have to do is realize people are enslaved. Well, they don't have the freedom to think clearly. They're being told what to think and how to think. So they don't really have the ability to contemplate it. How do you break that down? You do it by asking questions. You do it by presenting facts that confront the basic things of what they believe. And the facts in this situation are clearly on the side of believing that Israel has a right to exist and that Hamas must be destroyed as a military and a governing power. The facts are clearly on that side. And in the book, which is only 120 pages, I actually give 200 different pieces of documentation to demonstrate how this is true. And many of the sources are from people who shouldn't be saying this. Amnesty International, the Human Rights Campaign, they do not like Israel at all. And yet they are condemning Hamas for their violence, for their anti-freedom stance, for their lack of press freedom, and for their torture and murder of innocent people. So you got to know the facts. I'll just give you one example of how the facts can change people's minds. In one of our polls, we asked, do you believe that Israel's greater military power and wealth makes its cause unjust? And about half of young adults said, yes, that makes their cause unjust. Just the fact that they have greater military power and wealth. That tells you what worldview those students have believed, right? It tells you that they've believed sort of an oppressor versus oppressed mindset. If somebody is stronger, they are by definition wrong and unjust. Then we ask the next question. Do you believe the fact that the top Hamas leaders have all become millionaires and billionaires by skimming international aid designated for destitute Gazans makes their cause unjust? And the people who had previously said Israel was unjust changed their mind. About half of them said, oh, well, no, I guess Hamas is unjust. And then the rest just said, well, I guess I'm not sure now. They either were cast into indecision or changed their mind with the presentation of one fact. That leads me to believe that we have a rising generation that is open to the facts. Not all of them. Some of them are so cult mind controlled that they will never acknowledge the truth. But for those who are only in the margins of that belief, you can reason with them.
I, as you know, and maybe many of our audience know, I grew up under socialists and communists. And what impresses me the most is I know in Romania, socialists and communists came with the boots and guns of the Russians, and the sympathizer of socialism that work with the Russian, and they conquered Romania. Here in America, you have fear that conquers and lies that conquers the minds of people. I am astonished by the fact that, like you said, people don't want to understand the truth. Today we have Google, we have everything that you want, and look for the past, look for Gaza, and look for everything that it's there. And some of the information are correct, some of them might not be. But if you really want to study, you can find out the truth. And still, these people don't want to understand the truth and stand up on the truth. The danger that they go through and the danger that I see is these people, the generation of people, group of people that don't want to find out the truth and stand on the truth. In fact, they go into a prison land that are fed by a group of people about what to think and how to think. And if they believe that they are warriors and they will be slaves. And it will take generation. I am telling you from my experience, even after socialist and communist collapse in Romania, and now it's a democratic country, it took a long time for people to learn to think for themselves. So we have to make sure that we approach these young people in such a way, asking questions, demolishing their lies in such a way that gradually they will understand the truth. Because otherwise we are allowing those people to build a tyranny kind of the society, not the freedom that we have now in America.
Yeah, such a good word. I think you're right. People are captivated by fear. They think that, well, they know that the people on the progressive left control other people through shame and blame.
Mhm.
Shame on you for believing something different than what we're telling you to believe. And you are to blame for all of the ills in the world because you believe that. If you can recognize that shame and blame tactic, you'll see immediately that that is all the progressive left has to throw at you. They don't they don't have arguments as much as they have the desire to control the narrative, because a lot of them don't even believe that truth exists. So why would they try to persuade you of the truth? They don't even believe the truth exists for themselves. What they
Yeah.
do believe is that they can control the narrative, and by controlling the narrative, they can make you be quiet. Well, will they make you be quiet? Every person watching this show right now has to decide.
Yes, exactly. And also, another thing that people have to be aware is anytime we come to the truth, we find out the facts and situation, we are in the position that we have to take a position
Yes,
one way or another. And sometimes people try to avoid taking the position by ignoring the reality or by thinking that someone else will speak up for the truth.
that's
But
true.
each
That's I think
one,
that's that's great. I think that's a fair point. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think that's a fair point, because you assume that other people will take the responsibility, but you've got to take it.
yes,
Not
I because I believe you're right. Because I believe each one of us are unique, and God placed us in unique circumstances with a unique influence. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It's the sphere and the area and the truth that you know that God will help you to spread, and you have to take a position. And you are training these students, these people to take a position. I know one thing that many times, because for me prayer is it's a very powerful tool. I experienced that on the communist here in freedom. But for people that might be just watching and might be old, might be in a hospital, you can do a very amazing thing. You can pray for these people demonstrated, pray for people that are afraid, pray for the ministry, Summit Ministry, pray for our podcast, and your prayer will touch. And you will see the results of your prayer in heaven. It's very important. You can make a contribution if you want to Summit Ministry, to our ministry, whatever you want. There is always an opportunity for you to do something. You can share
yes.
this podcast with others. You can have the book that Dr. Jeff Myers wrote and share it with others. Take it to your pastor.
Yeah, exactly right. And you want to inform yourself, but then you want to start asking, who are the young adults around me who need to know this information? Who are the pastors who can reach out to a lot of people and get the truth out, who may not know all of this information? Just go to summit.org/Israel, get a copy of the book, read it, and then just start praying about who should be getting a copy of this. Then go back to summit.org/Israel. You can get more copies and then begin helping us spread the word so that people can come to an understanding of the truth.
Yes, I believe that you, Dr. Jeff Myers, you did a wonderful, excellent job by writing this book, by offering this book on your website, and it's now it's each one of us to make our part to spread the news
Yes.
about this, to help others to understand the truth, because that's what we are called to, not only to proclaim the truth, but to love the truth, that share it with others, with those who don't know. And I hope people will take advantage of this podcast to share it with others, to go to your website and have the book. Would you please say again where they can find the book?
Just go to summit.org, SUMMIT.org/Israel.
Okay, that is wonderful. We want to thank you so very much. Do you have anything else that you want to tell our audience, in your audience, before we finish our podcast?
I'd like to speak to people who are individuals of faith specifically. It is important to acknowledge that Israel has a right to exist. Whether you agree with how they got that right to exist, they do. They do exist and they have a right to exist. Second, the enemy is not the Palestinian people. The enemy is this group called Hamas. It is a terrorist group, and there are other terrorist groups like them. As Hamas winds down, another group will be coming on the attack, and that's called Hezbollah. Very different kind of group, but also having as their main goal to destroy the nation of Israel. I believe as a Christian, it's also important for me to recognize that God is not done with the Jewish people, that God's plan for the world has included the Jewish people for 3,500 years and continues to include the Jewish people. As a Christian, I'm blessed to be grafted into God's covenant. But God's original covenant people, starting with Abraham, were the Jewish people. And therefore, they're our brothers and sisters, even if their level of belief is not what we would think biblically that it should be.
Yeah, they are still under God's grace. And until Christ comes, they are under God's grace like we are. And we pray for them that they will accept Christ as their Lord and Savior.
Yes.
I just want to thank you so very much, Dr. Jeff Myers, one more time for returning to our podcast, for writing the book. And I want to mention to you what the liberals are doing with silencing you with Israel. They're not going to stop there. I know they're going to silence with you with trying to build what I call socialists and communists in America, trying to silence you. And I live under socialists and communists, which I call a land of lies, a prison land. That's what they try to build with everything when they try to stop you speaking. So for those of you who never read my book, Saving My Assassin, I will advise you to go to the Virginia Prodan books.com/product/book and read and understand that we are in danger by allowing others to tell us what to do and how to think. We are, in fact, becoming part of the problem in America to build socialists and communists instead of being part of the solution, and to speak up that, yes, like Dr. Jeff Myers said, Israel has a right to protect itself, and we have to right to live in freedom, that it's a gift from God, not from government, not from any entity. So be strong and courageous, and we hope that we will see you again at our podcast. Send us your question, and please share this podcast for many to understand the relationship with Israel, what they have to share with their pastor and others. Until next time, thank you so very much, Dr. Jeff Myers, for your contribution. And thank you so very much for each one of you, and God bless you.